Caregiver safety is an important topic with alarming statistics. Today on the podcast, we have Ali Al Jabry, who's an expert in caregiver safety, and he also has a great solution. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars podcast. If you provide services to keep older or disabled people living at home, then this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Ken Accardi.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars. Today, our guests and our topic are very interesting and I think very important. We're going to talk about the safety of caregivers. And we actually have with us a great guest. His name is Ali Jabry. He's the CEO of a company that I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but is it Quema?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right, perfect. And so we'll, we're here to educate, and we'll, talk a lot about what Ali has learned about caregiver safety, and then we'll talk about some things that he's done about it as well. And with that, so first of all, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Awesome. For those of you watching on YouTube, Ali has a really cool background that shows his branding and his product. And so it's very cool. So you'll see that, but most of you are probably listening as you're driving to your next home care appointment. But okay, I mean, let's just jump right in. I mean, I guess let's kind of focus and highlight some of the challenges and actually dangers that, home care caregivers, direct support workers are facing. And yeah, take us through that.
Yeah, it's quite unbelievable actually. Most people don't even know this, and that's part of why I really feel it's important that we talk about it more, because I want to say at least 7 out of 10 people I talk to who don't know anything about healthcare would never think that healthcare is one of the, if not the most dangerous industry to work in, right? And of course that extends to home-based care, right? Whether it's hospice or home care, right? And it's very unfortunate because it's an important part of our society, right? Like healthcare and caregivers are what keeps us going, right? Like, and it happens to anybody at any age. It's not age specific either. So knowing the risks that they face that are normally patient centered or patient related, so family members of patients, patient environments, patients directly generating violence towards caregivers. It's a very unspoken topic, and it's being more spoken about in the last, I want to say, 2-3 years, where even laws are being passed now, states mandating that violence against health caregivers is actually a felony, and you do go to jail. Like you get the full force of the court, basically. And that's really been what we've been seeing the last few years. So for home care workers specifically, you're walking into a house, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's behind that door, right? So there's no judging here either, because there's houses that maybe in Beverly Hills that are beautiful and $10 million houses. It doesn't mean that there's no chance of violence. There's still a chance of violence at these very affluent neighborhoods. So there's also this like connotation around like, oh, I'm going to a sketchy neighborhood, I'm scared. And some of the sketchiest neighborhoods are actually the safest. Like they take care of you more than other parts. You know what I mean? So that unfortunate burden caregivers live with every day, right? Like they're going into a house, they can't. Sometimes they let their guard down because they're like, I want to help this person, right? But in reality, there's always a chance that violence could take place, and unfortunately, it happens more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking, as you've said that, I have a neighbor. I live in a condo in Boston, and I have a neighbor who's uh, very healthy in her 70s, and her husband passed a while back and had end of life issues and some memory loss and those kinds of things. And at some point, as she was really became his caregiver, toward the end of his life, at one point, when he was frustrated about what his body couldn't do, he got very disoriented and he kind of like attacked her and
Oh,
this
wow.
sort of thing. And and she was able to kind of get through the situation. But I mean, it's a story that she's told me a few times, and I know that that's I mean, this is somebody who loves her and loved her dearly till his last day. But it could happen, not because of the person's a violent person, but just because of their circumstances. And especially, and interestingly, I mean, home care, and when we talk about home care heroes and day service stars, I mean, a lot of the business and probably what a lot of us think of is care for older people, but there's also a lot of disability services. And then another story that comes to mind is more from a media social reference, which is there's a movie that a lot of people watch every year at Christmas called Love Actually. And
Yeah.
in,
My
in
wife
that
loves that movie.
movie, yeah, there's this one, kind of young woman who, she has a brother with a disability and
Right.
who's in, institutional care. And, she makes sort of a life choice to go, when on one day when he's distressed to, kind of, uh, move away from something that she had really been hoping to have in her life, to put his needs first. And then you see a scene, in the facility where, she's really trying to calm him down from his distress, and he goes to strike her, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's great that it's going to be a felony, but I think that in a lot of cases as well, you might just be dealing with somebody who's strong, confused, and unwillingly or not really even understanding what they're doing, that they're taking out some inner frustration on the healthcare worker. And yeah, that's that. I mean, you said that, I mean, it's great that it's kind of coming into the conversation more and more in the past couple of years. I know that you had this idea and you've been helping, caregivers and health workers with safety for a while. But I guess one thing that comes to mind are there any statistics? Because you said that it is really happening a lot. Do you
Yeah.
have any statistics that you could cite in this arena?
Yeah. So one of the main stats that is very common, but this applies to healthcare in general, is that every hour two nurses are assaulted.
Hmm.
And another stat that is shocking is that for every 40 hours worked, a clinician or caregiver experiences 1.17 aggressive incidents, something like that.
Hmm.
So that could be verbal abuse as well, but it still is abuse nonetheless. For home care, actually, there's one that I wanna bring up. I think it was something like in the last 10 years, or was it 10,000 or 100,000? It was some crazy number, amount of incidents that took place for home caregivers. Let me just pull it up because that is a crazy one actually, and I was shocked when I read it. Um, but it's unfortunately just all too common right now, and it it shocks me that these numbers are stuff that we have to educate people on because most people don't even know about it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a couple of things. So first of all, the way that I met Ali is that we were both at a conference in Missouri, which was the Missouri Home Care Conference. And I remember, two things jumped to mind. One is that, you were in the kind of the exhibitor area. And I said, "Oh, this guy's, he's got like a name badge, like what's special about this name badge?" And then, and that kind of prompted me to say, like, let me see what's going on, and we'll get into that next. But the other thing that you said was that you were, I believe, the week or maybe a week or two after that, you were going to go to a conference for New England home care that was going to be in Connecticut, and you even
Yeah,
told me that there had been, a case in Connecticut that,
yeah.
yeah, what happened there?
Unfortunately, there's a nurse that was brutally murdered, actually, a home care nurse, unfortunately, and it was all over the news. Actually, it made national news and international news. Actually, it started even like a domino effect of where you're going to see more home care um, agencies and departments doing everything possible to implement safety measures because it's getting a lot more evident, and we've seen this trend already, right? Like healthcare in hospital is kind of a
Hmm.
couple steps ahead than home healthcare, in my opinion, because they are now implementing measures. They have implemented measures for a couple of years now, and it's almost being mandated. Home healthcare, it's still kind of like like underserved area of healthcare, unfortunately. So
Hmm.
that incident did start a process, and healthcare systems are now realizing that they are liable, and there is a kind of not only legal and moral responsibility, but it's also going to be the right decision to make for financially as well. So that's kind of where things are looking, and the stat that I wanted to share earlier was that from 2015 to 2020, there's a study that shows there's 117,000 aggressive incidents that took place, um, and for like healthcare workers in the home of the patients, for home care workers, basically,
Wow.
in
So
five
yeah, and
years.
the,
Like,
the the terminology they used was aggressive incident. Got it.
you know,
All right. I'll definitely. share that. And yeah, and I haven't, personally, I mean, as somebody whose role is supporting the home care agencies, and we provide, software for managing that. I haven't really been on the front lines and experienced that, but I bet it's more, more rampant than I've seen. I mean, this is a pretty big number and something that we should all be concerned about. So, let me kind of swing back to, this, there's this like, cool looking guy, this cool looking company, Quema over there. And, like, and they have this name badge. And I mean, one thing I guess I have observed when I visited a lot of our home care agencies is that some of them, their policy is, for a lot of good reasons, to have a name badge for their people. So when a caregiver comes, you know that they're associated with the agency and all that kind of thing. And
Yep.
and your company has a name badge, and tell me a little bit about it, and how does it relate to safety?
Yeah, so we we founded this company called Quema, which by the way is a Swahili word. It means like all good, I'm safe, I'm in a good place. It's also used to ask like, hey, is everything okay? Right? So
Hmm.
it's kind of like all good, right? You can use it as a affirmative or you can use it as a question. Hey, all good, bud, right? Like so
Nice.
it's similar to that. And that's kind of what we do, right? We empower people to say, hey, I need help, and empower people to check in with everybody. Like, hey, is everything okay? Right? Kind of thing.
Hmm.
So what we did is because of all this workplace violence in across the country, I think it's costing the industry about $56 billion. This has just been a study that was released by Fast Company. I want to say like a month ago or something. It's the
Oh,
industry is suffering $56 billion every year because of workplace violence. So what we
hmm.
did, and when I say workplace violence, you always have to remember that a bad actor is involved, right? Like
Yeah.
there's somebody who is creating the violence. It's not like a machine. It's not safety. It's security. Very different, right?
Right.
So that means that there's going to be somebody there who is a bad actor, and you want to kind of be discreet in how you call for help, right? So what we did is you mentioned that already. Like every healthcare worker wears one of these. Like they have their name tags, have it at all times because it's in some states it's actually mandated. You have to identify yourself as a healthcare worker before you walk into a house, or you can receive any patient any care from a patient, right? Or any care to a patient when you can give any care to a patient. So what we did is we took what they wear right here, which is their badge reel, and we made it smart. So we're the only company that has done this, and we actually are on a patent for that. So the fact that you wear it and then you can press the button just makes it so easy and discreet, and you don't have to remember to wear it. It's not an additional workflow. It's something that's on you at all times, and when you need it, it's going to be on you, right? So that's really the value there. It's like I can press it without escalating a situation of violence. So you can just be
Yeah,
like, hey,
perfect. So
look,
I mean,
I'm just a nurse. I know you're frustrated. I'm on your side. And by that time, you've already pressed the button and you showed them
mhm.
your name tag, reminding them that you're just a nurse. You're not the owner of the company or whatever, right? Like, so there's all these de-escalation tips that you could use. But the value here is that you're pressing it without alerting your attacker, because you don't want to escalate that violence. Because if you alert the attacker, it gets worse very quickly, right? And that's what we're avoiding.
Yeah. No, some really, really good points. And I think you described it well. I mean, a lot of, I would say the majority of people who are hearing this are going to be, driving somewhere and not have the visual. But yeah, I mean, what what Ali showed us is a name badge that is, I mean, very typical. And then there's, it has that nice retracting, you can kind of pull it down and up, and there's a little, clip on the top. And, that piece is maybe a little bigger than normal, but right there's, I guess, a hidden button on the side that they
Yeah.
can press. And I loved how you described that. They can just kind of reach up toward their badge and say, no, 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 look, I'm the healthcare worker. So it's kind of natural, and they don't even detect that
Yeah.
somebody's doing something. Then they can reach up and they could push that button. Yeah, I mean that's amazing. So when they push that button, what happens?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. So when you push the button, what happens is it syncs with your cell phone or tablet and sends your GPS coordinates to 911 and your supervisor or anybody else on your team that you would want to notify. With so the goal here is that you know help's on the way, and now your job is to buy time as the victim basically, right, or the potential victim. So that's where we also started beefing up our offering by including some de-escalation tips, including some tactics like using empathy as a weapon, like
Hmm.
literally understanding where they're coming from. And caregivers do this very easily, and they do this already, right? So it's just a matter of like being really aware. And unfortunately, it is a weight on their shoulders, right? But if you're in the industry, unfortunately, it's something you have to like keep in mind and wear with you.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. So I guess 911, I guess a great thing about 911 is you could dial it from your cell phone anywhere and people know where you are. So is that kind of what's happening? Is that like it's sort of dialing from your cell phone, or is it like,
No, no,
if
it's not.
no,
It's not. It's using the only thing we need is data. So, fun fact, there's a lot more data coverage in the US than there is cell phone coverage.
got it.
So, as long as you have data, the ping goes to the cloud and the cloud does all that. So,
Okay.
we provide all that service in the back end basically. But you do get a
Yeah.
phone call and a text message just in case you want to cancel the alert. But
Mhm.
most of the times nobody gets to their phone, and getting to your phone is not a good idea anyway. So if it rings, like you could maybe know like, hey, okay, at least the alert went through, or you just don't pick it up because it'll make things worse. Like, hey, who are you talking to? Like, hang up now. Like, you don't want to escalate that situation, right? And that's what could happen.
Yeah,
And
for
and
sure.
we've heard some horror stories. So I think we've been to 6 home care conferences right now, and we've heard
Mhm.
some horror stories of the kind of things that people have to go through. It's very, very scary.
Yeah. Hmm. So I guess like, so today, I mean, I'm in Boston, which is my native home and that kind of thing. You're on the road today in Louisville.
Yeah.
And so if you push the button on your badge right now, I mean, does it somehow, it kind of looks up where you are based on the
Yeah.
GPS, and then yeah,
Yes.
kind of, yeah,
Yeah. Like
perfect.
it's
So
so
it knows
specific.
which 911 to call.
Yeah, yeah, it's so specific. Like it would notify Boston Police Department versus Springfield Police Department, right? Like, or even different counties, like Springfield Police Department versus Northampton Police Department, right? Like very different police departments. It would notify the specific one,
Right.
and we're
Yeah, it's kind of
notifying
interesting.
police, not firemen or emergency services. It's normally police that we would be notifying.
hmm Okay, great. And is there, I guess, just out of curiosity, I mean, I watch like this TV show called 911, right, that I like,
Yeah.
and and usually it's like, somebody live is answering and saying, 911, what's your emergency, and that kind of thing. So, since this is happening in the cloud, is it speaking to them, or is it like, how is it,
So
can,
so
yeah.
so via the phone, like the text message and the
hmm
phone call is the way you could speak to the not directly to the operator, but to like an agent, let's say an operation center that deals directly with the PSAPs of the police departments.
Hmm.
So, for example, I'll give you an example that's maybe not very common in home care, but in a mass shooting, for example, somebody presses the button and hides in a closet but has their phone on them. They can't talk to 911 because that's going to be loud. But what they can do is text. So they could text and be like, active shooter. And that
Right.
message gives more information to police when they arrive. They know, okay, there's an active shooter and this person is in this part of the building or this person is in the park. And that can be
Yeah.
helpful. That could be helpful for the police department when they show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
And
interesting.
remember that the active shooter, the police when they come, they're not there to help. They're there to stop the threat, right? So the first police officer that arrive, their job is not to like help the wounded. It's their job is to actually go after the threat. The
Hmm.
second and third and fourth cop are their job is normally to help and aid, get people to safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, this is interesting to get kind of a behind the scenes look at,
Yeah,
how things work. Um, Yeah, and I guess I'm a technology geek, and this is probably the part of the show that people won't like that much. But there's this whole, kind of world of technology that's called the Internet of Things, or
yeah,
IoT. And one of the questions I teach a college class that's called Digital Technologies for Entrepreneurs. I teach at a business school,
cool.
and I on the first day of class, I showed them, this graph that says, like, that the amount of data, like on the day they were born, that was in the known universe, like all the data in, that was on all the computers in the world was, like a certain amount. And now we're creating that much data every day. And I asked them the question, I'm like, so why is that? And they're like, oh, it's because of, social media, because of Facebook, or it's because of, Instagram and photos and things like that. And those are all really good guesses. I said, nope, it's because, then I kind of ask them another question to try to give them a hint. I say, all right, have you guys heard in, high school English of this guy called Shakespeare, right? And they're like, yep. And I say, well, if you wanted to download to your phone, every book he ever wrote, um, like how long do you think it would take to download to your phone? And people are like, yeah, I don't know, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, that kind of thing. So I said, well, the thing is that, I mean, a brilliant human, in their lifetime of work, I mean, they're not going to write that much in data, but the reason that there's so much data out there is because machines are creating the data.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of it. So there is this whole, Internet of Things, and this is like a really great example of using IoT technology for safety and for making the world, a better place. So thank you for, what you're doing and that kind of thing. So what else? I mean, well, I think that some people might really be hooked right now, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I mean, my caregivers, my direct service professionals, whatever it is I have in my organization, they have badges anyway. I'd love for them to, get this badge that's going to help them with their safety. So how would they contact Quema and learn more about this?
Yeah, they can hit up our website. It's kwema.co. I actually have like a Calendly link that you could book a quick demo and session with us. And we'd be happy to tell you more about how it works and the benefits. And on the topic of technology, though, I want to take that up a bit more. I would say one of the beauties of what we've done is that we've done less but focused on doing something really well rather than doing a lot of things. And that's where like a lot of these wearables in healthcare are like not thriving, in my opinion. And that's what we're seeing, at least from the research we do with caregivers across the country and the world, actually. Like there's some buttons on there that have like 3 or 4 buttons. It's like if
Mm-hmm.
you're like high stakes and you're scared, like having 3 or 4 buttons or 3 or 4 functionalities or 2 use cases, like the red button is if I'm like only slightly scared. The green button is if I'm like really scared. Like who's gonna remember that? And who's gonna have the time and peace to like find the one button? Did I press the right button? Did I press the wrong button? You know what I mean? So the fact that we did less and focused on really the human element of technology, which is removing behavior change, removing additional workflows, making it like a no-brainer. The fact that you have it on you at all times, and then also it's something you're used to wearing every day, and we're even bringing it to the next level and adding like personality to it. So like some healthcare systems, for example, they're like, hey, we want our logo on it, and then I'm like, cool, we can do that, but it seems that some of your caregivers want to put their own stuff on it. So what if we design like 5 different badge rail designs for 1,000 caregivers and let them decide? Like one says, I don't know, like nurse, like cool nurse or something like that, and it has the logo of the system, you know? So like those kind of things like do matter, right? So the simplicity and the ease and the fact that it's like brainless, almost like it's an innate button. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to actively put brain power into pressing this button. You can just do
Yeah,
it.
and yeah, and you've kind of brought two thoughts to my mind. So one is that in the same college course, we teach I don't think we do it anymore, but we talked about this company that was actually founded in Massachusetts at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell. That's called Invisaware. And the idea was that, like, oh, there's like this little bracelet you could wear or this little pendant you could hang from your backpack that has a button on it. It does a similar thing. And the other idea I can think of is, like there's this whole thing that is very germane to our client population or patient population, which is called these personal emergency response systems, which is, kind
Yeah.
of the I've fallen and I can't get up button. And, I think that, I mean, part of the issue with both of these is that, people just don't have them. It's like that extra thing, like it's that extra piece of jewelry. Whereas I think one of the glorious things about the Quema solution, in addition to the simplicity, is that they need it anyway. And and if like a lot of states have mandated that your health workers need to have a badge, that's great. But if your state hasn't, you should do it anyway because
Yeah.
because I mean, first of all, it brings more of a professional um, kind of look to your agency. And secondly, it can come with this safety element if you know the right people, and Ali's the right person.
I appreciate it. And remember that like I like to say that I'm a nurse advocate, right? Nurse safety advocate or caregiver safety advocate. And the
Hmm.
truth is it's because there's such a big fight happening right now for more better work environment, work ratios, all those fun stuff, right? And one of the things that we really learned was that like having something that could share your location is is a touchy subject because nobody wants to be tracked, right? So
Yeah.
that's something else that we put in as a non-negotiable is you can't turn on the badge reel from your desktop to know where this person is, because
Right.
that's when you lose everybody, right? You'll lose momentum, you'll lose buy-in, and that's really important because designing this from the caregiver's perspective is really how we want to go about it, and we advocate for the caregiver safety. Like we go to boards and tell them, hey, this is your legal and moral responsibility to do this, but
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a nice guy, I'm gonna figure it out financially too, so let's talk about that, right? But in
Yeah.
reality, we're poking the bear. We're poking the
Yep.
bear and making sure
Yeah,
that
I hear you.
they spend money on the safety of their caregivers. Not all the time they say yes, but we try and make a good argument, right? So it's important.
Absolutely.
It's an important
Mm-hmm.
topic.
Yeah, and we actually get that same question. So we provide what's called EVV or electronic visit verification. And so, the way that's working is in most cases, the caregiver is clocking in and they're clocking out with their mobile app. And at those times, we have to, essentially prove that they're at the correct service location. So we are grabbing location then, but just as you said, we're not like LoJack or anything where we know where they are at all times and when they're not working and things like that. There's no way that the agency can say, where's this caregiver right now using our technology and things like that. So I think that you've really done it the right way. And yeah, that's awesome. All right, so listen, we're in the home stretch. I think people have learned a lot from this. Thank you, especially for really kind of highlighting us to the importance of caregiver safety and what's happened there. And it really does sound like you guys have come up with a fantastic solution, and I'm happy that it's becoming more the conversation. And I hope that this podcast and all the other outreach you're doing in the community is going to bring more people to have this great safety mechanism. So one more time, to get in touch with Quema, the company, you would go to kwema.co. So it's like just CO, it's not .com. So that's like one thing to be a little bit careful of. But I think if you just type KWEMA, you're going to find it. And
Yep.
there's a link right there to say, go ahead and set up a meeting and you can learn more about it. And yeah, so let me just thank you one more time, Ali. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for sharing this really important message on home care heroes and day service stars.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And to everybody out there, if you mentioned that you came to us through this podcast, I'm happy to send over some free samples. So happy to help you keep your staff safer.
Love it. Thanks.
I appreciate you. Talk to you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Home Care Heroes and Day Service Stars podcast, produced by Ancoda. You can listen to back episodes by visiting 4homecareheroes.com. That's the number 4, then the words homecareheroes.com.